welcome back to Black Magic. Get out of here. Hey there, welcome back to Black Magic Craft. All of the cool kids build Mordheim terrain, and I never do because I don't play Mordheim, at least, like, not yet. But why do the Mordheim people get to lay claim to cool ruined fantasy cities? D&D can have a cool fantasy city that's been destroyed. Morkborg could have a creepy ruined city. I mean, Frostgrave literally takes place in a ruined city. So I'm not sure why this association for a ruined building is always with Mordheim. So despite not playing Mordheim myself, I want to build some Mordheim type buildings for other games and the inevitable Mordheim game I eventually end up playing. I just started with a basic Tudor style house, quite ruined. There's a lot of different ways you can approach building these things. And surprisingly, doing a ruined building takes a lot more consideration than just doing a normal one, because you can actually see everything. You can see inside and you can see the cross section of the build. Whereas with a full building, you can hide a lot on the unseen inside. In an effort to do this in a cost-effective and time-efficient way, I decided to just go with the approach of using ordinary dollar store foam core as the substrate for the house. I went with a floor height of 3 inches because that's the usual floor height I use on most things, and I think it's the best balance of looking appropriate at scale and still having enough room to fit hands and miniatures inside. For the roof, or I guess the attic space, I doubled this to 6 inches to create an exaggerated fantasy roofline. And since this would end up being a destroyed building, I didn't get too finicky with my layout. To make the second side, I literally just traced the first and called it close enough. For the front, or I guess the back, or whichever part it was, I just cut some wall height strips. Then I laid out and cut in some simple window holes. Again, not getting too technically accurate with anything. I decided to cut the damaged sections out first before assembly, not for any particular reason, other than it seemed like a good idea at the time, and just that's what I did. A little bit of hot glue assembly, and I had myself a ruined house. Sort of. For stability, I added in a sheet of foam core at the bottom to act as a substrate for the main floor bricks, and I roughly cut in a broken edge. I also did a bit of damage to the front second story wall at the same time. Next were the timbers for the second story floor. I used some square stock balsa strips for this because they are perfect and easy to work with. Rather than just gluing them in place though, I thought I was clever and I cut some squares into the walls so that these timbers could just slide right through. This gives a nice projecting bit of timber for visual detail, and it made the whole floor a lot stronger in the process, so win-win. For the Tudor style strips along the exterior, I was all out of coffee stir sticks and I didn't have any flat balsa, so I opted to just split some of my square stock in half. This might not be ideal, but it is thankfully pretty easy to do because the balsa wood is soft, and having one side be flat to glue and then another non-smooth cut side that would be facing out actually looks pretty good. I had some smaller square stock that I used for horizontal pieces above and below the windows, and since the inside of the house would be visible, it also needed to be decorated. This is a big reason I've avoided doing open, ruined houses in the past. It's actually a lot more work than just doing a normal house because you have to completely decorate the inside as well. Thankfully, you can also eliminate entire wall sections, so that does save you a bit of effort. I wanted to tackle the stone floor before planking the one above it. This way I'd be able to actually see what I was doing. I used foam bricks that I had pre-cut. Well, these were ones that were left over from my giant tower build, and having them already made meant actually using individual bricks was a lot less daunting of a task than it usually is when I also have to make them that day. I really don't mind the process of laying individual bricks. It's not the fastest method, but I do think it's the best looking, and I find it more enjoyable than cutting in and carving grout lines into a solid piece of foam. And when your bricks are carved into a solid piece, or say you use a textured roller, you can't wrap the corners, meaning you have to deal with hiding the seams somehow, which I find kind of unsatisfying. Individual brickwork is pretty tedious, but it's the type of tedium I actually enjoy. This, I guess, is highly personal, but surely there are others that feel the same way. And doing it on a small building like this doesn't even take that long. When you're doing a huge section of something large, it can feel never ending, but on a basic house, it's the perfect size to feel satisfied before you get to the point of being sick of doing it. And yeah, I just like the way it looks. I'm gonna interrupt here for a sec and take a word from our sponsors. My family and I recently went on a road trip through America, and within I think 2 days, my wife had her credit card information stolen. Now, I'm not saying it's because she often uses public Wi-Fi without a VPN, but I'm saying there's a good chance it's because she uses public Wi-Fi without a VPN. Personally, I would never take that kind of risk. I am way too paranoid about hackers and data theft. It's very easy for someone controlling a Wi-Fi network to intercept your data, your passwords, your credit card numbers, all that stuff. So using a virtual private network like Surfshark acts as a big old defensive wall against the horde of internet goblins. And you can actually try it for free using the link in my description, and you'll get an additional 4 months if you use the coupon code BLACKMAGIC. There's lots of reasons to use Surfshark. Use it to block ads, block malware, use it to access content blocked in your country. Use it to protect yourself. If you get your credit card information stolen while on holiday in a foreign country, it's really inconvenient. Trust me. I decided to go out and get some coffee stir sticks, and I found some with square ends, which is even better. I used these to do the wood planking on the floor, but made sure to carve the edges first with an X-Acto knife so that they didn't look so perfect and machine made. And since I now had these, I used them to do the rest of the wood planking on the exterior. I added a piece to the bottom of each window opening so that they looked a little bit more finished, but I did cut corners by not framing in the sides and the tops of the window, hoping that the foam core layer would just sort of blend in and look good enough in the end. And then onto the roof, which would be a bit harder than normal because I couldn't just lay a big piece of foam core or cardstock across the thing and cover it with some shingles. I had to put in individual framing planks that would be exposed. In some amazing fluke, the stir sticks I bought were the exact perfect length to fit in here without cutting them. I will never again in my whole life be this lucky. For the vertical rafters, I used the thinner balsa strips because my roofline was curved and these would need to be bent. With these in place, I could do some busted roof planks and quickly get a pretty good looking roof structure. I also used the larger square balsa to finish the edges of the foam core and was pleasantly surprised that I was able to bend them into shape to do this. It did break in a spot while trying to bend it, but I don't know, I think that made the whole thing look better. Now for the shingles, I've always used paper, cardstock, or foam. But I recently got some strips of very thin wood veneer for a previous build, and I thought they would work well as real wood shingles. And since this was such a ruined structure, it wouldn't need that many of them. I just broke some and applied a minimal scattering of shingles to show where they once were, but that they're mostly gone. I gotta say, the real wood shingles, they looked pretty good. And then it was time to do the stucco, and for this I just used some paintable acrylic latex caulking with some black paint mixed in. That's it, nothing else, literally as basic as it gets. It quickly became apparent that avoiding getting any of this on the wood was a lost cause, so I said to hell with it and decided to cover everything in this mixture. It would act as my primer. And the elastic nature of the caulking would help hold everything together with a nice protective and stretchy film that would be unlikely to crack or break over time. And I got a little ballsy and decided to use a large amount of this stuff to actually grout the tiny bricks. I was worried that I'd obliterate the detail that the individual bricks give, but after wiping away the excess with some damp fingers and paper towel, I was relieved to see that it did just fill the gaps and leave a thin coating on the brick faces exactly how I wanted. I decided to do basically all the painting with an airbrush. This just makes it so much easier to get into the corners on a piece like this. And while I do like the way it looks to hand paint a miniature house, it takes a lot longer. And it's not something that I'd want to do on a bunch of them. I was looking at this as the first in a possible set, knowing that I'd want to make more and they would need to aesthetically match. And honestly, an airbrush is the way to go for batch painting a bunch of buildings. I like using bigger pieces like this to practice my airbrush accuracy because it doesn't matter if I overspray or make mistakes, and it gives me a lot of hands-on time with the tool. helping to improve my skills using it. I'm quite happy with how this single house turned out. Now it's a matter of sitting down and making a bunch of them to create a full board setup. That being said, you might not need or want a full board of several ruined buildings. Maybe for your RPG adventure, you just need one for a particular plot point or encounter, and I highly encourage you to give building at least one a go. It's a lot of fun. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I want to thank a couple creators who heavily inspired me aesthetically and in build style when making this. Eric's Hobby Workshop, Devs and Dice, Berserkerworks Sick Table that I saw at Into the Dungeon Fest, and of course MS Terrain Lab, who I think is the undeniable king of building amazing ruined fantasy cities. Please drop me a comment below and let me know if you want to see me build more of these and maybe build up a whole board or city, because I kind of want to do that. If you want to support the channel by picking up some Blackmagic Craft merch, original art, or original builds, you can do so at blackmagiccraft.ca on my web store. And last but certainly not least, the best way you can support the channel is by joining the Patreon. That support is crucial to keeping this channel going. Throw a buck or two my way every month and it goes a very long way. I'd love to see you there. Thanks for watching. See you again next time. Cheers.